I'm very proud to kick off the 2026 Albany County budget season. Of course, you know who I am. I'm Wanda Willingham. I'm Chair of the Audit and Finance Committee and the Deputy Chair of the Albany County Legislature. And I just have one question to ask. Can you hear me?
Yes.
No? Ken? Okay, really good. So I know that there are a lot of people that are very anxious and also excited about this year's process. So to reiterate, the purpose of the meeting is to review our current budget status, understand any key financial updates, and discuss planning for the upcoming period. We'll go over actuals versus forecasts, highlight any major variances, and ensure that we're on the right track with our financial goals. We'll also open the floor to questions and feedback to make sure all departments are aligned and any concerns are addressed early. So what I would like to do is just keep this efficient and focused, and feel free to flag anything that needs more in-depth discussion. So right now, I'll move on to our majority counsel, and I'll have her take attendance.
Sure, Madam Chairman. Ms. Willingham?
Present.
Reedy is excused. Alex?
Present.
Camisso?
Here.
Demolowitz? Ray Joyce is on his way. Lakakis?
Here.
Bergdorf?
Here.
And Grimm.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, I would also like to take attendance of the rest of the members that are here, and I'll start from this end, Mr. Moriello. I'm not going to give your name, you're going to give your name.
I'm sorry.
We're taking
already made a
attendance of the members that are here.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Mr. Moriello,
Yes.
Everybody give their name.
Give your name.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
Frank Moriello. Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
okay.
Walt Bergdorf.
Wrong way.
No, this one.
Susie Haddock, this district. Danielle Gillespie, 12th. Vicky Plotsky, 38th.
Dr. Carolyn McLaughlin, District 1.
Bill Rickard, City of Cohoes, 17th of the 2nd District.
Susan Marillion, Ledge District 22. Ellen Rosanna, Ledge District 24.
Tim Lane, 14. I wasn't sure there were other members coming, so. Okay.
And with that tonight is Dave Reilly from the Management and Budget Department, and I will give him a few minutes to give us an overview of what he has for us tonight, and you can tell us who you have with you.
So I brought Michael McLaughlin, the Deputy County Executive. Figured we'd let him go 1 minute or so here to give a kind of quick overview of everything and a little intro for me, and then I'll jump into it.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner.
And just remember to talk into the mic so everybody can hear you, including the people.
You hear me now?
here.
All right. Thank you very much, Commissioner. As always, it's a pleasure to be back in front of all of you to present yet another year's fantastic budget. So we are, in this budget, we're continuing our effort to decrease the county tax burden on residents while increasing revenues and increasing services for our residents throughout the county. What you have before you is a $900+ million budget. The levy will increase 2% to $103 million. We're also projecting a sales tax increase of also 2% in this proposal. And with that, those are kind of the basic overall facts. We have a presentation for you on the screens and in front of you. We are certainly excited to present this budget to you and open and willing to answer any and all of your questions. I know the process in budget development, and I know all of you know this as well, is both daunting and stressful. But as always the case, our Department of Management and Budget has performed fantastically. So thank you to the Commissioner, to all of the members of the Department of Management and Budget staff for their hard work. And this is the culmination of many months of work with our departments. And now we are excited to bring that product to you for review. Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. So to start off, kind of very broad strokes here, but for 2025, in years past, we've had issues where the state has throttled revenues from us. We've had delays in getting things. Those were issues of concern that we had to bring to you as of this year. None of those problems. We've left that all behind with COVID and all that in the past. So in terms of actual revenues year to date, when the budget is assembled, we don't know the final sales tax number for third quarter. So it kind of puts us in a weird spot with when we have to release the budget versus when the final payments come in. We know exactly where we stand. So I'm happy to tell you that the final payment for the third quarter of 2025 came in. We're trending a couple $1 million above budget. So we're in a good spot there. And as Mike said, 26 is budgeted to be exactly 2% above what 25 was at. So a very conservative number. I tend to try to stay very conservative with the sales tax because as we've seen, that can swing pretty hard and it is a large revenue, both for us and for the smaller municipalities that get the distributions from the county. For some of them, it is their largest source of revenue outside of their tax levy. So if I could jump into kind of going through the comparison of revenues here, that would be the slide deck that I brought. So the 2026 executive budget has total revenues of $794 million, combined with a levy of $782,240, for a total of $898 million. We get to the 902 because we have to add in a little bit extra for uncollectible and things like that. It's a standard number every year. So the increase to the levy from 101,747, 295, exactly 2% year over year. This is obviously below the tax cap and below the maximum increase we could have taken. Total growth in revenue of 42.5 million, or just under 5% at 4.97%. So the first slide here on the tax levy, or hold on. Sorry, this kind of keeps going through what I was just talking about on the year over year. That 4.97 in the bottom right shows you the total percentage growth. So, should we go on that one first? So now here we are on the tax cap levy calculation. I was able to get a little sharper version for you guys this year, so you can actually read it as opposed to previous years. But if you, and Madam Chair, this is up to you, if you want me to go through the actual nuts and bolts of the exact calculation all the way through, or if we just want to go to the next slide that just lays it out one after the other, save you a little time. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So this levy calculation is included in your budget books. It has a few more years in there. Kind of made it a little smaller here for readability. But what it has you do is you start with last year's tax cap, or last year's tax levy filing that we filed with the state. The state then gives us the tax-based growth factor. We factor in the pilots from last year, which were 2.23 million. The allowable levy growth factor, which is at 2% this year because it's the lesser of 2% or the actual growth. Then we go into the pilots receivable for this year. You'll see it dropped off a little bit. Those numbers all come from Mike McGuire. And that gives you the available carryover that you have. So you can see that we had 1.56 million that we could have used in addition to the standard 2% there. So what that gives us, the highest we could have raised the tax levy to under the law would have been 106,313. As you see in the bottom right cell though, the number we just told you, the 103,782, is the amount we're taking for this year's tax levy. So that we'll have a few $1 million roll over next year onto available carryover in case it's needed. We thought 2% was a good compromise with, kind of trying to keep up with inflationary factors, things along those lines, while still, keeping the effective tax rate on a downward trend there. So for any of you that are not aware, the biggest issue we have with the tax cap, there is a mechanism to exceed it if you need to. The problem is then we will lose the raise the age funding that we get from the state, as well as some of the other juvenile justice reforms that the state has passed. Towns, cities, villages do not have that restriction. So if it's, one level of government versus another, we're the ones that get kind of handcuffed with that. That said, we've not had an issue with compliance with it in my time here. So, our tax rate is simply the amount of our levy divided out among the equalized assessed value of property in the county minus the total value of the exemptions that are given on those properties. So that said, the tax rate is an average. So when we tell you guys that, you know, the effective tax rate went down X percent year over year, you know, in 2025, it was $2.7313 per 1,000 of equalized assessed value. In 2026, it drops to $2.5674. That's not gonna be the same, and I just wanna preface that to everyone, it's not gonna be the exact same for everyone in the county. Each municipality will have their portion apportioned out to them, and then they will split it up. So, and obviously, as we've seen, different municipalities choose different ways. I know the city of Albany has one rate for commercial businesses versus residential. So there's no way for us to kind of spit out the number for everybody, not knowing all of the other factors in each of them. That said, this is our 13th year of reducing the effective tax rate. These decreases should have us somewhere between the 11th and 13th lowest effective tax rate in the state once all the budgets have been adopted. The state releases those numbers in December, so I'm going based off of last year's. And if you want to compare this back a little bit, in 2014, that rate was just under $4 per thousand of value. So it's been a nice steady trend down, as you can see by the chart here. Up here. Next one, we bring in the sales tax here. So as you can see, 2024, we had actual receipts of $370 million. And the third quarter, as I said, came in at $97 million, a little over $97 million for this year. So about $2.5 million over last year. We've been in a nice little stretch here since COVID hit. The previous 17 quarters of sales tax receipts, the highest in the history of Albany County. Totals continue to rise year over year, as you can see by the chart. Historically, our third quarter is usually equal or greater than the second quarter. That's kind of a metric I used to get the budget done with. The exception to that was 2022. A lot of that is, you know, summer vacation spending, travel, back to school shopping, things along those lines. So as I said, amount received $2.4 million over the same time period in 2024. Current budget for sales tax for 2025 is $375.95 million, as stated earlier, exactly 2% over last year's budget, and about 1.5% above where I predict 2025 to finish at. So then the next couple of charts continue to go through, just kind of breakout of sales tax, you get a visual breakdown, and then this one here where you have the the large spikes going, that is actually a year-over-year growth by quarter. It's a little different way of looking at it. Some people find it kind of confusing, some people find it way more intuitive, so I just include both of them as an easier way to look at it. So that brings us to slide 9. So to balance this out, the budget proposes a usage of up to a bit under $21 million in fund balance. I say up to because this is the last revenue to be booked in the closing of the books, and any unspent appropriations will reduce that number. This is a way to budget over a longer timeline, helping to reduce the need for tax increases while also maintaining a solid fund balance. This fund balance, combined with our conservative approach to forecasting sales tax, continues to provide us with a safety net to weather any issues that we may encounter. So on this slide, you'll see a breakdown of revenues across the various funds, categories they fall into, just broken out by different classifications. The next one in slide 10 shows a more graphical breakout of those numbers and kind of slices up the pie for you so you can see where our budget goes. As you can see, our revenue goes in the budget. As you can see, the sales tax is quite large there. Slide 11 is the master settlement agreement. This is the lawsuit against the tobacco manufacturers. So, as you can see from the chart, it's down a little from down a little over the past few years. But since 2000, we've only had 2 years that came in greater than 5 million and 5 that came in below 4 million. So it's a fairly stable revenue that we can predict, even though right now we're on kind of the lower end of that banding. Yes.
On the master settlement, the tobacco,
Yes.
does that end? Is there a, or is this a continuous?
This goes in perpetuity as long as people keep smoking cigarettes made by the brands that settled that lawsuit. There's actually a charge per cigarette that goes into this fund, and then it all gets broken up.
Can I just ask one thing?
Of course.
Okay, I want the, all questions held. Please, if you have a question, raise your hand so that, you know, I will acknowledge you. But hold on to your questions, and when he's finished, then we'll, you know, open the floor for questions, okay? Everybody understand? Thank you. Go ahead, Dave.
All right, so slide 12 here brings us to our earnings on investments. Been kind of a bigger number for us the past few years. So, and I have to thank Comptroller Rizzo, who's over there tonight. A lot of this was because of changes made when she came into office. You know, we worked with her and her staff, basically to invest funds that under Comptroller Connors, we were never allowed to invest. Bond proceeds when we had borrowed money for capital projects but had not spent the funds yet, things along those lines. You know, basically they've helped us kind of go through every piece of cash that we can legally get out there and invest to maximize those rates. So let's see, so we ended the year, last year, earning approximately $17.3 million from investments. For 2025, we reduced the budget income to $8.3 million, expecting more Fed rate cuts than actually happened. We're actually a little bit above that number already. We're at $9.7 million year to date, with a quarter to go. So, you know, yeah, as I said, there will be in the budget a decrease coming to these funds. You know, part of that is the American Rescue Plan Act. Those funds have now been dispersed out to the community. So we were making interest on those. We'll no longer be making gains on those funds. Additionally, after months of, you know, expectation and waiting, combined with, you know, some very public pressure from the White House, the Fed cut rates at their September meeting, 25 basis points. The market had been kind of pricing that in pretty much the entire year, and some expecting, you know, faster rate cuts than that, even though this was the first cut of the year. So the dot plots, which are the anonymous predictions by all the Fed governors, pretty much the best way to predict where the rates are going to go, because these are the actual people voting on them. You can back in from there, or extrapolate out from there, that they predict 2 additional rate cuts before the end of 2025. So an additional 50 basis points getting cut off the federal funds rate, and 1 more for 25 basis points in 2026. So rates are predicted to go down a bit, but not insanely. That said, if you're in the market to buy a house, might be a little better time to wait right now than jump into it before the first of the year. The next slide here, this is one of our newer sources of revenue. So not one of the largest, recreational cannabis. It was asked about a lot last year, so I added the slide this year. So in addition to the state taxes at the distribution level, which are mostly based on actually the strength of the product, it has to do with the percentage of THC in whatever they're selling. There's also a 13% excise tax on it at retail sale. So the state gets 9% of that, then 4% of that gets sent directly to the county after the sale. Of that 4%, we only hold 1% though. 3% goes out to the municipality where the actual store is located. And as we're seeing kind of stores come online, you know, part of the issue with, you know, budgeting it originally, the first year or so of legal sales, was all the issues the state had with rolling the programs out, getting the actual stores open. They missed their deadlines, things like that. But obviously 2024 was, you know, a large year of sales. 2025 is tracking to be pretty much in line with 2024. So 2024 total came in at $1.15 million, so that works out to about $860,000 went back to the municipalities, and then $287,000 to the county to offset other expenditures. So that's kind of my revenue overview. Do you you want to open it up for questions now, or?
Are you finished with your presentation? If you're
Yeah.
not, you can continue.
No, I think, rather than, me kind of just sitting here talking, you guys probably have very specific questions, so let's get into the meat of it.
Chairman Cunningham, do you have any questions?
Just a couple. Thank you, Dave Reilly, for all your work on this. Thank you, Mike. I know you guys put hours and hours into this and appreciate all the work of the executive.
Thank you.
Hot tax is separate.
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing that I just kind of wondered is, we're going to get into some of the expenditure risk areas like Medicaid and so forth. This is just a table setting, high level of kind of holding the line, if you will, on essentially the direction that the county exec has taken for years, which is to keep our tax rate low. But we'll get into all that, I assume.
Whatever directions you guys want to go in, yes.
Okay. And then the final thing I would just say is the scuffle in the beginning of the meeting, the printer broke in the middle of printing these voluminous copies of all this material. So sorry about that. Thought people would be understanding of that.
We'll make a change in the budget for maintenance.
Thank you.
Electronics.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so I'm just going to start with 2 questions, and I'm going to open it up to the floor. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Please comment on the federal funding decrease in the 2026 proposed budget.
So with as much press as that's been receiving, it's kind of a misnomer. The big beautiful bill, as the feds had titled it, does have a lot of potential decreases to it. That said, the vast majority of them don't trickle down to us until 2027. Kind of aligns with the election schedule. If you want to read into it a little bit, it makes sense. They're going to put the cuts in after the midterm elections, so they won't impact chances of getting reelected. Since it's not until 2027, the state has not been giving us guidance on things yet because they're still waiting to see what they get impacted on. It seems like a lot of the talk, though, when they're talking cuts to services and things like that, it's more, they're trying to look at it as who's eligible for benefits, because they're saying that New York State has one of the highest error rates. Basically, we will certify people onto the rolls, and they're saying we don't check them often enough, and it's not an Albany County issue, it's a New York State issue, where we don't, review them often enough to take them off quick enough, so we're giving out too much benefits. So if that's the case and, the checks become more frequent, it's not like we can, prop up and say we're gonna give, extra on top of that unless, we're gonna go, down a very interesting rabbit hole. But that said, nobody really knows how it's gonna play out at this point. So while I wish I could give you a better answer than that and, a little better long-term, I'm just gonna urge caution. Keep going on the fiscally conservative path that we've been going on under County Exec McCoy and my predecessors in the budget office. We've been doing great building our fund balances, building our designated reserves as well. And I think we're in a very good spot. I think we're in one of the best spots for any of the counties in the state.
I'd also quickly add that a lot of what will happen in 2027 will be dependent on the decisions from the state. So if you get any information that you see that's a snippet of a cut from the federal government, remember that most of the money that flows to us for these sort of programs, the decisions related to how they're funded, I've given this example before, but safety net as an example, the state changed the formula here a few years ago during my time in the county, changing the percentage that the counties had to pay versus what the state had to pay. So it went from 50-50 to 71-29. So we also need to figure out, or we will know in 2027 what the state decides to do in that regard, and that is the real trickle-down effect to our budgetary conversations.
Just to correct you a little bit, we'll know in 2026 to plan for 2027.
Right.
Yes.
All right, my second question is, what is the projected use for the fund balance in 2026, and what's going to be driving those costs?
So as I stated earlier, just under $20 million is budgeted in terms of use of fund balance, But that said, the way that we budget here, you know, every position budgeted fully for the entirety of the year. The kind of the, I guess, granular level that we budget all of our appropriations, things along those lines, we always have excess. We have appropriations that are never spent. So when the comptroller's office goes through to close their books up for the year, they bring to you guys the change of, okay, here's the negative lines, we balance them out with where we have excess, and there's money left over at the end of that. Because of that, you know, we've budgeted a use of general fund, you know, as a last resort for the past, this will be the third year in a row, and we've done it other years in the past. There hasn't been a need to touch that money though, so the fund balances continue to grow. This is just more of kind of an accounting offset.
I'm going to open the floor now to our members. Okay. Mr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just so I'm clear on the fund balance, I heard Dan last, on the presentation, he said 10 million he's taking from reserves.
So we're adding $10 million, roughly $10.5 million to designated reserves.
So that wasn't the fund balance, you're boosting your reserve.
Yeah, so the budget contemplates a taking of $20 million from the fund balance if everything is expended, you know, the whole rest of the budget. As I said, you know, I don't see that happening at all. Part of that, though, is to offset it so we can push a little bit more into the designated reserves, $5 million, I believe, into debt service, and then $5 million into capital projects.
So part of the 20 billion that you're dipping into is creating 10 million in reserves.
Mhm.
So it's net 10 million then.
Roughly, yes.
Okay. Medicaid, we've heard that in the news a little bit. It's always the biggest line item in the county budget. I think it's 73 million this year.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Our county, that's just the county share.
Yep.
So there's a federal and state share of Medicaid also?
Should we just go through this when DSS is up here?
Yeah, it would be a better question for DSS, and it's also, are you asking changes related to what's been announced?
I'm just
or-
saying, how do you, because Medicaid's exploding. It's really a runaway train. So your number is pretty much similar to last year.
So-
Even though Medicaid has gone up dramatically.
So the federal government gives us our weekly share, the amount we have to pay into that every week. They update that, I believe, biannually. So I can take the trending on that, and I know what the current, you know, is. That's gonna spread into the first 6 months of 2026. And then I can take a trend analysis on that to budget out for the second half of the year.
But there's no impact on 2026 as far as federal Medicaid spending goes?
Not that we've been notified of yet.
Because you said it's for 2027. That's the way the bill was written.
Well, we don't know 2027 either, but we do know that if there is going to be an impact, it will be then.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Bricker.
Yeah, got scribbled little notes everywhere, I apologize. I'm trying to understand the dedicated reserves, the 10 million that goes to debt service and capital projects. Now, is it anticipated that we're increasing expenditures and the debt service is going to go up and you need the money to cover it? Or are you talking about prepaying debt service for the $5 million in debt service? Because if I remember correctly, the controller told us that the last couple of years we hadn't even had to borrow. So why are we putting $5 million into a debt service reserve from a balance that's going, it's like your mortgage has gone down if we haven't balanced. And is the $5 million to offset what has to borrow in capital projects? Or are we prepaying $5 million to draw down the balance?
So, try to work my way through the
I'm
multiple
sorry,
points there. That's okay.
it's a linear.
Yep, so as to your point, speaking to, you know, working with the comptroller to not have to borrow for the past couple of years, 100% correct. It's been amazing that we've had the cash balances to be able to cover our projects, and that has led to a reduction of our outstanding debt. That said, this brings our debt service reserve up to $22.8 million from $17.8 million. We still have $200 million of outstanding debt. So if we're in for a potential, you know, bad time that, you know, press and everybody seems to think is coming, and everybody knows something is coming. This is just sound fiscal policy to have, just like your personal finances. What your mortgage is. If you can sock some away knowing that next year you might get laid off or change to your income or something like that, you want to be prepared to cover for it.
So this doesn't actually relate to expenditures, it actually amounts to putting $10 million out of the unencumbered debt fund balance and increasing the two restricted fund balances, each by $5 million for potential use for a rainy day.
Correct, and this is along the lines of what the state comptroller has been urging counties, cities, and towns to do for several years now.
Is there a guideline for the percentage of of outstanding debt that the controller urges you to have?
Sadly, there's not. What I was aiming to do is to get us closer to 1 full year of debt service. So if certain things hit the fan, we know we have that covered.
Okay. And what will these adds of 5 and 5, what will it bring those two debt service reserve funds to?
So if you're on page 42 of your book, it adds it in right there for you.
Okay, I can look at it. The other question I have relates to sales tax.
Yep.
I read so much, I don't want to, I may get the timeline screwed up, but did Napoli announced either yesterday or today statewide sales numbers, which is, I assume, why you end up getting you finally got your third quarter numbers. But he talked about a 5.8% average statewide. What was that percentage for Albany County?
I would have to calculate that and send it to you guys. I can send it tomorrow.
Okay, I just wondered.
We're a couple percent off, yeah.
Are we close, or did we do
Off the top of my head, I don't think we're exceeding that 5%. But
Okay,
it's
so
single
he
digits.
doesn't have that.
No, I'm trying to,
Yeah, I know, but he said he can't give it to you off the top of his head, all right? So, I'm going to ask another question. Okay, and please, if you can, review any increases in employee retirement and healthcare costs across.
I actually have a note on that one. Hold on a second. All right, so state retirement's budgeted for 2026 at 28.785%, or 28.785 million roughly. So that's a fairly easy number to come to. We have to pay based on the way that the state calendar doesn't perfectly line up with our calendar. We have to line up with two bills that the state comptroller's office will issue. They give you estimates 2 years out based on your current workforce, current earnings, things like that. So it lines up pretty close. And then we have to do 25% of one bill and 75% of the other bill. So that's how I derive that number from. So this is up from 26.9% for 2025. That increase is mainly due to the increase in salaries. We had some union contracts go through a couple of years ago. Some of those collectively bargained groups did fairly well. I believe the sheriff's deputies and the COs were about 10% across the board between their step increases, their salary. When you combine it all together, the total spend per deputy and for CO. Obviously, unions aren't the only ones. We've done a cost of living increase of 3%, which is basically what the unions got for the most part, across the board for our non-union workers. Does that cover all the points you had there?
Okay. Okay, yes. Okay, let me ask you this.
Yep.
Please comment on any extraordinary increases above the 3% in salaries.
So since this is kind of a countywide, let Mike handle this one.
Yeah, so there's, of the increases beyond COLAs that you see in the budget, there really isn't anything that goes above 5% inclusive of the COLA. We have run into a few notable challenges, more than we certainly are comfortable with, over the year in terms of recruitment of leadership positions in the county. First say thank you again to the legislature and leadership in the legislature for allowing us to get rid of the residency requirement and have waivers for leadership positions that we want to hire for individuals who live outside the county, because that has been somewhat helpful. But we were fortunate enough to bring somebody on staff recently who has extensive experience on the city level in Albany related to salary examination and adjustments. And so when we began the process of the budget, it was our intention to begin what we hope will be a multi-year conversation with you. And we hope you'll agree to begin raising salaries in a modest way for leadership positions to address these challenges. And of course, they are both comparison related to like positions in comparable areas of the state, as well as trying to attract positions. We had one position in the Department of Health that remained unfilled, with multiple candidates turning down the position due to salary for over a year, which is, given what happened a few years ago, a pretty essential position to have. So that's one notable example, but there have been others. So that, compounded by the fact that we are having difficulty finding people, and issues related to parity among like positions within the county itself, led us to make adjustments to leadership positions throughout the county, and you will see those in the budget. The ones that do exceed the 5%, we'll have to go through them line by line as you go to department to department. But with those, they almost exclusively are due to issues of parity, specifically on the legal side of things. And so we were trying to bring some level between those positions of leadership in those departments throughout.
Now, do I have any other questions from the members? Yes, sorry, Mr. Grimm.
Oh, thank you, Chair. How do you budget for St. Rose? In fact, I heard the county executive say yesterday, they thought the maintenance would be $3 million a year, but it wound up being $6 million.
So,
Just to take care of the place and
no, it's
keep people out of the building.
it's a great question.
But how do you, going that you're planning to put things in there, most of it, I don't know if any private investments have been made there. It seems to me it's either nonprofit or government. Is that correct?
I believe it's all government.
So far, government, yeah.
Yeah, that's a concern of mine. I'd like to see some private tax-paying investment. But what do you put in the budget for St. Rose, given that so much is in flux right now, Dave?
So, thankfully, I have more data now than I did when we first did, when we first acquired it, and had to budget for those first few months of operating. And when I came to your board here, or your body here, if you remember last year, we put $6 million into that for not even a full year as a contingency. We didn't know how much it was going to need to be. Estimates out there were, $3 million a year, 3.5. So hopefully it was that. It turned out that was a very optimistic number. At this point, we're averaging probably a little under $400,000 a month in carrying costs. That's obviously going to fluctuate with the seasons and things like heating, air conditioning. But that's kind of, for the entirety of the campus, that seems to be the maximum number. As we start to peel properties off, sell them off to outside owners, things like that, obviously those costs are going to go down because we won't have to maintain those buildings. Depending on which buildings they are, subsequently the grounds around them, plowing, parking lots. It all depends on what, how quickly it gets dispersed out.
Do the nonprofits pay for the maintenance? They did contribute to the maintenance?
There's no nonprofits.
There's none there now?
So in terms of, specific to this section of the budget, revenues, what I'll say is that, there's many different types of arrangements that can be made through the authority for it. If a nonprofit comes and wants to lease, it would probably take the form of what is a triple net lease, where obviously they're not paying taxes, but certainly maintenance and things of that nature, unless they bought the property outright. Either way, all those revenues would go towards the debt. So, we anticipate significant buildings being taken off of the county's books altogether, getting purchased, and those revenues going directly towards the bonds to pay off the bonds.
So do you anticipate private investment in that area?
Yes, there's no way for that many buildings to not have some private investment. But I will point out that the property has been on tax rolls for
100 years?
100 years. So any additional tax revenue, even if it's 10%, is
Keep it
above,
coming.
was above what it was before.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
If I could just slightly correct you there,
Go.
Deputy. It won't be additional tax revenue.
Well, that's right, okay. That's
It is
good.
just a spreading of the tax burden out in the city of Albany, because so basically, say if the total tax, and I'm just gonna make up a number here, say $100 million for a round number is the assessed value of properties in the city of Albany. If this was to put $20 million worth of buildings back on the tax rolls, now everybody's tax bill is getting spread out over that 120 instead of over that 100. But it's still the same bill from the county to get.
There's still the county property tax collected, as well as sales tax, which would ultimately find its way to the county.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was a bad mistake. I haven't done tax foreclosure with you folks in a long time. My apologies. Rusty.
Okay, just one more question.
Thank you.
Just for technical information to members, on page 28 of your budget book, there's a misprinted chart
Yes.
contained in the book. A insert has been put in your budget toolkit to update that chart with the correct numbers.
And I do have to give Eric credit. He caught that within probably an hour of the press conference ending. It's the chart from a couple years ago,
Maybe an hour.
was originally printed in there. So yeah, he's been provided with the current up-to-date one, and you guys should have all that information now. Sorry about that.
All right, Ms. Bergdorf, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, and this may be, maybe I'm too far in the weeds, but when it comes to St. Rose, so we already authorized, what was it, 60 million? What was the total authorization?
80. I think it was 80.
What was,
Well, no, there was a.
There was a
umbrella
large number
of 80,
that was
but then
authorized
we
before we
decided
ever even-
we had to use
Yep.
40 plus carrying costs, capitalized interest, debt service.
So the initial authorization was larger, to your point.
Yeah,
But there was no need to bond for that because we were able to buy the campus for, I believe, 36 million. And then the additional 4 to bring it up to roughly 40 was to set a debt reserve up. So if there was any issues with paying the debt service on there, it would come out of there first. So basically it gave the banks a little bit more breathing room to be a little more comfortable giving a $40 million loan to an entity that had 0 books and records, and it was just assets that were in foreclosure.
what do we owe on it today?
The full, we haven't, the way it was structured is interest only for the first few years, and the interest doesn't even hit, the first interest payment will be December 31st of 2026,
And what is that balance?
$40 million.
40 million bucks. So if we put in $4 million a year, okay, does that change our taxable, or our investment? It goes from 40 to 44, and then if nothing's sold in the next year, we draw another 4, it's 48?
No, we're not issuing any more debt on that.
Okay.
The
So how do
operating,
we-
the
how
operating
does-
expenses are coming from the county.
How does that money get back to the county?
The county's not the one who took out the debt.
No, but putting up to 4 million, the 4 million a year, you said it looked like those carrying costs were gonna be, the county executive said
So-
it might be 6.
Yep, so the way the debt was written was on sales of assets, that money has to go directly to pay principal. The county then gets paid after the bondholders.
Okay.
Because we'll be, once the bonds are paid off, the authority will own whatever is left. They can still continue selling
We
properties.
have taken money out of our fund balance to do the 40 million, right?
No, we've taken, the only money that's come out of county coffers is the monthly operating expenses since we took ownership of, or since the
Okay,
authority took
so we
ownership
got-
of the campus.
So our nut is 40 and then 400,000 a month.
Well, the 40's on the authority, that's not on us, but yeah.
Okay. But how do we get paid back? The
Is
county.
this something that you need to
So-
respond in writing to, or you have the answer?
Yeah, we can provide some clarity related to the, how the bonding of but to the commissioner's point, the bonding is not on county books. It is through the Pine Hills Land Authority. That is authority debt. So that has nothing to do with the county. We backed it, but that is their debt. When they sell properties, that pays off that debt, and only the operating costs right now are covered for us. Now, once the 40's gone, the revenues come to the county.
Yes. And that's how we become whole.
And that's how we claw back the money that
Yes.
we have. Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. What's the
Thank you.
mechanism?
Ms. Petto, I saw you had your name up. I just wanted to correct something. The members of the Audit and Finance Committee, they are the ones that, if they have their hands up, they are the ones that I will always call on first, just so that everybody understands that. Okay? Right now, I haven't seen anybody from over here, but I did see Ms. Petto. Going to ask her. She can go ahead with her question.
Thank you, sir. What is the primary source of the county's pilot funding? Why did it go
Can you
down?
repeat the question?
Yes, what is the primary source of the county's pilot funding and why the decrease this year?
What's the primary source of the pilot funding?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
So I'm not the expert on real property, but my understanding is the vast majority of the pilots, if not all of them, are negotiated by the municipalities, not by the county.
And then how does the county get part of that as revenue?
The municipalities include that when they give us the assessed value, and
Oh,
if we want to get into,
percentage.
yeah, it's in their piece of the pie.
Okay, thank you. But we don't have any further direct pilots, like there was one that was attempted to be negotiated with Albert Med at some point in time?
Not to my knowledge, but I could check on Mike McGuire just
Thank
to
you.
verify.
They notify us when they're negotiating a pilot typically.
Yeah.
And that's how we become aware.
Thank you.
To that note, I believe we actually do have some on some of the solar fields,
Yeah.
but that is only additional revenue because solar fields by New York State law are exempt from property taxes.
But it's considered pilot.
It's considered pilot, it's a good faith where they put some money in
Yep.
to kind of make the municipality happier that, to have them as a neighbor.
Got it, thank you.
Okay. Now, do I have any questions from any other members of the legislature? Chair Lady?
Yeah, so my question is about total federal aid. So you have in the 2026 budget put in about $3.5 million less than what our 2025 number was. So that federal aid bucket is all kinds of federal aid that flows from the state through to the county, or sometimes directly.
Sometimes direct, sometimes
From the
through,
feds.
yes.
So here's my question. That's a 3.2% reduction that you're budgeting in this year's budget. My question is, given what is happening in Washington, we're right now in a shutdown that has ceased spending starting October 1. A lot of that funding is not programs like Medicaid. It's programs that go through the federal appropriations process. There has been a concerted effort starting with the OBBA, and it will continue through the fiscal year 2026 approach process to cut lots and lots of different programs, including infrastructure, including other things, not just social services programs, human services programs, environmental protection. Are we budgeting enough of a reduction there? Because I think we're going to get slammed. And you're reading every single day in the papers about clawbacks of existing economic development projects around New York State by the Trump administration. Is the bottom going to fall out of federal aid, not just on Medicaid, but on everything else? And are we being conservative enough?
It's a level of conservative where I'm comfortable with literally having my name on this book. I don't have a crystal ball, I can't predict everything. That said, with all the information that we can get, our department's working with their state and national organizations. This is the guidance that has flowed down through them of what to expect to be hit with at this point. If I could predict it fully, I wouldn't be here. I'd probably be back on Wall Street, doing a lot better for myself.
Do you have any contingency plan on what to do if the bottom does fall out?
That's what we've been preparing for the last 10 years. That's why we have an all-time high undesignated fund balance. We have all-time high designated reserves. And that's what we're putting that money away for.
Yeah, I would say that's exactly right. So as the commissioner mentioned, the financial situation when the county executive took office with the county was completely different. We built up to make sure that our contingency plans and reserves were ready for something like a COVID type scenario, and we weathered that rather well. Now, of course, the federal government also came in and assisted with ARPA, but what I would say is that, let's say if the federal government does step out, because of that planning and the fact that the federal government was able to back us up in that case, we are even more prepared now if the federal government goes, DEFCON 1, whatever the correct term is. We had this debate in the office today. We're in a better position now to handle that through all of these reserves and through a fund balance that is healthy enough to handle it. That is not saying, the county executive, I think mentioned in his presentation the other day, the concern with SNAP. If the state were to pass that full cost on to the county, that would be an extreme reaction from the state. We don't assume they would do that. So, you're kind of hedging your bets that, all right, if they pass some portion down to us, how much further can we take it? We're in a better position now to handle that sort of thing than we've ever been.
And thank God we got all the ARPA money.
Oh, yes, well, investment income alone.
Not be clawed back.
Yeah.
Okay, so, let me go. Okay, so between SNAP and Medicaid, okay, how bad can the effects be on the services that we provide, and also the effects on our budget as far as Albany County is concerned?
I'll be honest with you, Madam Chair, I don't think that we can tell you that. I mean, what we could say is, again, to reiterate what the county executive mentioned, $1.5 million a week, $6 million a month, if that full amount was passed on and made to be county share, we wouldn't last long. Is it likely that that would happen? No, it isn't. But that just gives perspective for how bad it gets, because the feds aren't going to eliminate SNAP altogether or do some extreme reorganization of the revenues that come in, but it is, given past experience that I've had, a possibility that the percentage that localities pay into a program may change. That is where the real rubber will meet the road when these potential issues arise here in 2026, in the middle to later part of 2026. But unfortunately, I don't think we can give you details, and if we did, we would be creating an expectation that doesn't really hold.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, buddy.
I assume that if we lose federal social service money, it's going to be under the guise of what the federal government, and I'm talking about the administration and the Congress, are talking about waste, fraud, and abuse. Abuse being people who are being paid by Medicaid and WIC who may or may not be eligible under the words of the program today.
Okay, Ms. Bergdorf?
Yes.
I hear what you're saying. You're talking about waste and it's okay.
No, you didn't even let me finish.
Yeah, but get to your question.
Get to my question is, if they disqualify a particular cohort under social services, do we have to make the change to purge our roles? Does the state do that? Or does the federal government do that? Because you're only going to get compensated for what the federal government believes, depending on what ultimately gets agreed to on these subjects, what is legit. I hope we're not thinking about saying if there was 100 million and it gets cut to 80, that we're going to come up with $20 million to make the system whole and continue the way we're going. So I'm trying to figure out how
So this
the
is better.
tapering of our roles will work.
This is a better question for the DSS commissioner, but I will say this. We don't make the rules related to what's traditionally known as entitlement programs. So in DSS, it's WIC is Department of Health. So you got SNAP, food stamps, you have Medicaid, you have TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, and then you have HEAP and things of that nature, okay? The rules related to those programs are set by the federal government and the state government. We do not set those rules. So any changes, they are going to have to decide. And then the local share associated with that, I gave the example of safety net. Safety net is what happens if you've been on TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, for 5 years, you kick off onto safety net. They changed the local share requirement for that. So I can't tell you because those decisions are made above us. And it would be, all of these systems are a state system. Everybody knows, they've probably heard the acronym WMS. It is a very old system on the state level, welfare management system, that's supposed to have been replaced for 2 decades now, but it isn't. It's everything in these programs goes through WMS, okay? So the eligibility, the formulas, and because the state can be more generous or less generous, that is what determines eligibility. So any of those changes would have to happen on that end. So I can't tell you how that would shake out until we have more information.
Chair Lady?
Yeah, just to kind of make sure people understand how this works. The changes to Medicaid and other programs where there's an eligibility standard in the OBBA essentially did nothing to change who is eligible for the program. What they did do is create a lot of hoops and additional eligibility reviews and work requirements and other stuff that quite honestly will make it really difficult for counties who determine and check the eligibility, because we're going to have systems in place to do that more often. But it did not do anything to change the eligibility of the program. It just created a lot more bureaucracy for counties and states to have to manage, because the eligibility remains the same.
And it gets worse because with Medicaid, it's a bifurcated system. The state has significant involvement related to the assessment of eligibility as well as the county. So there's going to have to be some rectification of that system.
Okay, all right, so now, do I have?
And there's also a Medicaid Inspector General who has been in office for decades that already does intensive investigations for any kind of Medicaid fraud, so don't believe the hype. Sorry.
Ray, did you have a question?
I did, but Michael answered it, so thank you.
Okay, very good, very good. All right, do I have any questions from any other members? Okay. If I don't, I want to thank you for
Can I ask a question?
Okay.
No, sure.
Keep
I just want to wait for the other members, please. Thanks. Thanks for all the work, by the way, you guys put into the budget. I appreciate it. Dave, you're one of the best commissioners there is, really. But there was a $50 million increase in this budget, which is 6.5%, which is pretty large. What are the principal drivers of that $50 million increase?
I mean, so the increase is something that is necessary from a cost perspective, right? Things cost more money, right? So you're going to have to increase over time. I realize, Mr. Grimm, we've had this conversation many times. Maybe a difference in philosophy, I don't know. But as I kind of opened with, we're continuing our philosophy of increasing revenues and services while decreasing the tax burden. So I'm going to couch my answer under a kind of a a larger theme here. We don't agree with cutting taxes. We agree with gradually decreasing the tax burden over time on residents in a more methodical and thought-out way over time, which is exactly what we've done. Because when you cut taxes and cut revenues in the next years following, you can't make up for that lost revenue. And I'm not saying it very artfully, but the commissioner can jump in here and correct me, as he's done very effectively a couple times today. So, you know, we've increased while also decreasing the burden. And that's exactly what effective, in our view, effective budgeting is. And we do that to, one, keep up with increased costs, two, increase services, and three, this falls into the increased services category, but find different areas that are in need of more investment and increase those for, you know, obviously there's a huge push from a juvenile justice and services perspective right now. Those are needed right now. Same for mental health. And therefore, there's going to need to be an increase to keep up with the increased demand for certain services, as well as the increased costs associated with inflation, et cetera.
All right, thank you. All right, so first of all, I do want to thank you for your presentation that you gave, the questions that were asked and answered, the participation from the members, and great presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so now, on Monday, okay, we'll have our audit and finance session coming on, and that will be of the separately elected officials, county executive, county clerk, district attorney, the sheriff, our comptroller, coroners, the board of elections, and management and budget, okay? All meetings do begin, you know, at 5:30. And I'll just give you a brief. On Tuesday, it's going to be infrastructure and general government. On Wednesday, we have our legal agencies, and on Thursday, we have our human services. What I want everyone to be mindful of, we have 8 specific presentations on Monday. Okay. On Tuesday, there will be 11 separate presentations. Yes. Okay. So I just want to remind you, if you have any questions, you have until 12 o'clock, 12 noon to get them in, so that whoever the presenter is, they will be able to add that to their presentation. So hopefully you will get your answer then. If you ask a question that the presenter cannot give you an answer, just know this: we will not drag it out. What we will expect is that they will get that information back to you, and not only will the individual who asked that question, will make sure we get the information to all of the members of the legislature. Again, thank you for your presentation, and we'll see you again, people, on Monday.
Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn. Got a motion?
Good work, everyone.
Thank you.